So this is the educational meeting for TAN. Shauna Rampley is presenting. We are thrilled to have you. Shauna's got a lot of background in doing a lot of facilitation, coaching, on-time training, does a lot of work with helping people understand how their brains work, getting people to be present. And I had really thought that we all are in need of figuring out how to possibility think in these days and times, and how do we get more solution oriented and more open in our minds and less fear based. So thank you so much, Shauna, for sharing with us. I think all the times that I've talked to you about this have just been so valuable for me. So welcome everybody, and please, Shauna, take it away.
Super. I want to just make a few comments and then I'll share my screen and get into the presentation. But first of all, I wanted to thank Anne and also Michael Podolny for inviting me to participate in the Jumpstart the Southwest project. And as Anne and I decided to partner to go in on that, and we talked about what we were going to offer, I was very strongly nudged to do possibility thinking. And then with all the stuff going on in the world, and I have to tell you how excited I am, because in the course of putting together this presentation, even just thinking about how I wanted to frame it, I realized this is what I need to be doing in the world for right now, and to really narrow in on this and to work with business owners and leaders and people of all kinds, because it is so needed, because the changes we're facing are immense. And I'm going to get into a little bit of that. But and then, as often happens, because...
Oh, you got muted, Shauna. Shauna, you're muted somehow.
Okay.
There you go.
I wasn't muted all that time, was I?
No, just the last 10 seconds.
So, as often happens when you start focusing on...
It did it again, Shauna.
No, you're fine.
I'm not doing it, so.
Something happened, that's weird. Okay, go ahead.
When you start focusing on something that's important to you, then synchronicity kicks in and all kinds of information comes forward that fits right in. And so I love PBS, and this week on PBS, and last week they've been doing their fundraising cycles, and they have had on Daniel Amen. He is board certified adult and child psychiatrist, but he's been specializing in brain health for many, many years. And this is the 14th special he's done for public television. And this one is called Change Your Brain, Heal Your Mind. And I watched it twice. And one of the things he said is, fall in love with your brain to save your mind. And I thought, what an amazing quote. I mean, just what an amazing way to do with it. Fall in love with your brain to save your mind. And I'll tell you a little more about him later in the program, and why I think his work is, he is a possibility thinker of the highest degree, and has been a huge inspiration to me for a long time, all the time I've been studying the brain. So I also wanted to acknowledge Dan Gary, and some of you know Dan. He was my former business partner in Soaring Eagle, and he's really the one that got me into studying the brain. And in fact, did all the heavy lifting on the secondary research, looking at what all the latest and greatest findings from neuroscience, and especially people that were focusing on it from the standpoint of leadership and how to use that information in organizations. Okay, so I guess people are either here or they're not going to be here. So let's get going. All right. Now, you can hear me okay. I can't see my mute button.
Yes,
When I have this screen share on, I can't see my mute button. So if I get muted, and you need to text me, okay? I have my phone right here. So I decided to call this possibility thinking, stimulating imagination to thrive in a different world, because it is a really different time in the world. And today, some of the things we're going to do, I'm going to define possibility thinking for you. I want you to be constantly throughout this program assessing your own mindset. What do you think the future holds? Where has your mind been going? Has it been going to a positive future? Have you been caught in worry and stress over the things you see going on in the world? And just keep thinking about that as I teach you more about what the mind does with thoughts and how the brain influences that. I will define imagination and explore a little bit how to stimulate it. We're going to learn some facts about your brain from the latest neuroscience research, and I'm going to show you how your senses and your mind operate to keep you safe from possibilities. In other words, you have to work really hard to be a good possibility thinker, because your brain is not geared to do that. It is, but it's more strongly geared for survival, which works against possibility thinking. Now, I want everybody, for a minute, wait. I forgot to do this. I want to do this. I want everybody to take one hand, put it on your forehead, and take your other hand and put it on the back of your neck. So come on, play along, Allison. Okay, I can't hear you, but that's okay. So the hand on your forehead represents your prefrontal cortex, is the one on the back of your neck where your brainstem is. And I think this is the most important 4 to 6 inch journey that you have to traverse every day. Because again, your brain will want to keep you in your safe zone. And to be in possibility thinking, you have to be in your frontal cortex. Okay, so one of my favorite quotes is by Norman Vincent Peale, "Become a possibilitarian. No matter how dark things seem to be or actually are, raise your sights and see the possibilities. Always see them, for they are always there." Now, wow, isn't that great for what's going on right now? We're in the middle of this economic slowdown because of the pandemic. And then now for 2 weeks, we've been having protests all over the world because of what's happened here in the United States. There are not only protest groups in all 50 states, there are protests going on all over the world. And we're not going to talk about politics because people on different sides of the political spectrum look at that whole situation differently. They look at the pandemic differently, for that matter. But the bottom line is, these things are changing our world, and they are sometimes making it hard to see the possibilities. And I think I love this quote because I love the word possibilitarian. I mean, think how it just rolls off your tongue, possibilitarian. So there's all kinds of quotes. There's all kinds of inspirational quotes, like this one by Arthur Clarke: "The only way to discover the limits of the possible is to go beyond them into the impossible." Well, all these things sound great, but I'll tell you what, your habits keep you from doing that. And so I decided I would quote myself. And it is my firm belief that humans are creatures of habit. And the more you see the humor in this aspect of human behavior, the more effectively we can navigate the overwhelming amount of change occurring in the world. Learning to laugh gently and often at and with oneself is a key success skill that will help you learn new habits in order to thrive in today's world. So this chart, and Dan Gary actually gets the credit for this chart. He made this wonderful graphic that talks about the 3 different pathways you can be on when it comes to your thinking processes. You know, life is full of change, it's full of stress, and just life itself will throw you. And most of the time, we are actually going down the middle pathway into conditioned thinking. Our brain operates on autopilot about 95% of the time. Now, a lot of people I know that are very smart people, very intelligent, very successful, but they think they're in charge of their life. And I'm here to tell you, you're really not, because you're on autopilot 95% of the time. So if you put a lot of good stuff into your mind, and especially into your subconscious, then you may be operating the way you want to all the time, but the chances are, at least part of the time, you are not doing the things you say you would like to be doing because you're on autopilot and you're acting unconsciously. Now, what you can do is train yourself to be a possibility thinker, and we'll get into that more later. And you do that from the place of your prefrontal cortex. If stuff is going on in the world like is happening now, there's a lot of people that see the, let's say, the timing for opening up again, right, business-wise. Again, there's a lot of ways to look at that. We're not talking about the politics of that, but there are people who are, some people are more threatened by the economic damage that's being caused by not being open than they are about the threat of the COVID-19 virus. Other people are more threatened by the virus. They're like, hey, money, I can make more money later. If I lose my stuff, big deal. I don't want to lose my life. I don't want my loved ones to lose their life. You know, it's the same basic situation, and yet people interpret it differently. And some people will go down into the dinosaur brain, and there are a lot of implications to that. More on that in a few minutes. I want to frame this in terms of what I think are current challenges for TAN advisors, okay? There are a lot of experts today suggesting that we may never be able to return to our pre-crisis reality, that instead we face a yet to be defined new normal. And as business owners and experts who are contracted to coach other business owners, we're faced with creating new opportunities, not only for our own business, but we have to simultaneously engage and learn with our clients in navigating a new business reality, a continually changing new normal. And the business reality, just the reality of the world. Now, that's not a small thing to reframe things for ourselves, see new possibilities for ourselves at the same time we're having to coach other clients and getting a handle on your mindset and staying in charge of your mindset and doing things to strengthen it in the ways you want it to be strengthened. That in some ways can seem like a full-time job, and yet you're also having to help each one of your clients do the same thing because they're in their own process of responding to this yet to be defined new normal. So to be effective, we have to be skilled in possibility thinking and then constantly nurture and build a robust imagination. And I'll tell you more about where that link to imagination came in a minute. But I want to acknowledge that imagination is one of the hardest things to keep alive under pressure. So it is an extra challenge. Now, just this morning, I was watching the news, kind of relaxing a little bit while I was drinking some coffee. And Representative John Lewis was on CBS this morning, and he paraphrased a quote by Martin Luther King Jr. "We must learn to live together as brothers and sisters in this world we share, or perish together as fools." Now, he was commenting about the protests around the world. However, if you think about it, you could look at this also as, how are we managing the pandemic? How are we managing our role in the pandemic? How are we looking at opening up the economy again or slowing it down? What if we have more spikes? I mean, all this stuff that you see endlessly on the news and probably you're sick of hearing about. But I thought it was very interesting because I've always found John Lewis a very inspirational man, and he's quite a bit older now. I think he's in his 80s somewhere, and he's also suffering and likely dying of pancreatic cancer. And yet he still had the commitment, because he has this ongoing lifelong commitment to civil rights and helping other people respond to what they see as a challenge in a peaceful way, that he was willing to get himself together and go on Zoom with Gayle King on CBS this morning. And so I just wanted to share that I find him inspirational, and there are lots of people we can look to who may inspire us. They're different people for you than for me. Now, why do we need possibility thinking? Now, I'm now quoting our own John Rice, right? Now, John is someone I admire and love and highly respect his ability. I got his permission to use this quote. He put it in a document he created for the Jumpstart Southwest group. And he says that the problem is that almost all businesses in New Mexico have sustained grave damage from the COVID closures. Many will never reopen. Many that do reopen will fail and then close. Some that reopen may grow healthy again because they rethought their customers, market, scale, business model, and financing, et cetera, and made resourceful and in some cases really radical changes, and likely experience some serious, sad losses along the way. Now, and he said, all businesses will have to make serious consequential changes, many of which they've never seen or conceived of before in order to survive and then maybe thrive. And I have to tell you, a couple of weeks ago when our Jumpstart group got this, it was scary to read this. I went, most businesses? Okay. Wow, that's a big impact, and it was very sobering. But John went on to say that part of what you do with confronting and solving a problem is that each business owner is forced to think through and act on refocusing, reformatting, rescaling, reinventing a business, or closing a business. And he gave some examples: renegotiating, reconfiguring, replacing. But he also said that successfully confronting these problems by oneself is unlikely to work for almost anyone, because almost no one has the bandwidth to know enough to confront so many big survival questions. Now, again, this is our own beloved John Rice, and there are lots of other experts. You can look to some of the medical experts. This is Jim Laurie, who's CEO of Stanley Black & Decker, and he says, never in lifetimes has the power of imagination been more important. Leaders need to seize the opportunity to inspire and harness the imagination of their organizations during this challenging time. So a lot of people seem to know what we need to do, but how do you actually do that? Well, Anne Delane Clark found this wonderful HBR article. It's called "We Need Imagination Now More Than Ever." And I love the definition of imagination they offer: the capacity to create, evolve, and exploit mental models of things or situations that don't yet exist. So imagination is a crucial factor in seizing and creating new opportunities and finding new paths to growth. And they suggest that all crises contain the seeds of opportunity. Many businesses will find a second life if they can keep alive and harness their imaginations. And they acknowledge that it might seem like a frivolous luxury, but it's actually a necessity. And that's what I think. I would have said possibility thinking is a necessity. But, you know, there are some similarities, some differences, but let's don't get stuck in that. The point is, can you see something that you never saw before? Can you see something you saw before but didn't think was possible? Can you see something that you think is actually impossible and work your way through all the barriers to a point where you could make it come real or something similar? They are suggesting that all leaders have to ask themselves, am I giving people grounds for hope, imagination, innovation, or am I using pessimistic or fatalistic language, which could create a downward spiral in organizational creativity? Now, this would imply that you have to have some good mental health going on. And so I would again say that statement that stood out to me from Daniel Amen: fall in love with your brain to save your mind. You know, there's been all of these experts being shown on news. How can we keep ourselves out of depression? How do we think about the future? You know, how do we keep our relationships going, our selves going, our health going in the right direction? And all of these people are talking about mental health. And, you know, again, I told you, I think, you know, Layman's one of the most amazing possibility thinkers ever. And because of his long-term study of the brain, he sees many of these things differently than a lot of the other brain researchers. And he literally believes and says he can show you how, if you will change your brain, you will heal your mind. And in a program that's on now, still playing that change your brain, heal your mind, he goes over a lot of mental health conditions and shows how focusing on brain health would actually resolve those or at least minimize them. So here we are again. Are we going to be able to go on the upper path to possibility thinking, or are we going to be stuck in our autopilot, or are we going to get pulled down to the dinosaur brain? Now, normally if I were teaching a long class, I would have a lot of these with the fill in the blanks. This is the only one I have. But I wanted you to think, what if you think about what possibility thinking is, it's the ability to manage one's blank and to make proactive choices regardless of challenging, stressful, or blank circumstances. Now, what do you suppose goes in that last blank? Somebody unmute themselves and take a guess. What goes in the challenging, stressful, or blank circumstances?
Negative.
Not, that's true, but it's not the word I'm looking for.
Shauna, is it unknown?
Even more
How
challenging than that.
How about seemingly dire?
Seemingly dire, okay. And so threatening is the word I'm looking for, and seemingly dire would work. And then the first two blanks, the ability to manage one's, what do you have to be able to manage to be a good possibility thinker?
Your emotions.
your emotions,
And your reactions.
Reactions.
your reaction. Well, we're talking about possibility thinking. You've actually got to be able to manage your thoughts and then your attention, because your thoughts often drive your emotions. Sometimes the emotions will drive the thoughts, but they're connected. And if you're going to be a possibility thinker, you've got to know what you're doing with that part of your mind. So the blanks here: ability to manage what's attention and thinking, and to make proactive choices regardless of challenging, stressful, or even threatening circumstances. Now, change is not merely necessary to life, it's life itself. We've been hearing for many, many years from Alvin Toffler. He told us that the illiterate of this world would not be those who can't read and write, but those who can't learn, unlearn, relearn. Boy, we're in the middle of that now, aren't we? Learn, unlearn, and relearn. So what goes on in your brain? The average number of thoughts we have during our waking hours is 60 to 80,000. We could get off into some fun about which gender has the 60 and which has the 80, but we'll skip that for now. The percentage of these thoughts that are habitual, that means repeated every day, 90 to 95%. And the percentage of habitual thoughts that are negative is 80 to 85%. So if you do the math, you're spending about 75 to 80% of your day having habitual negative thoughts. And if you don't think that that's accurate, then you have not been listening to your self-talk, because believe me, that is what most people do. And it's so part of the way you talk to yourself. You know, you walk across the room, you stub your toe, you trip over something, you go, oh, what a klutz. You know, you have these things, you think you don't mean anything by them, but they are there and they show up over and over. Negative thoughts are like Velcro. And the reason is your negative experiences are stored more forcefully in your mind, because there is that part of you, of your brain, that knows it has to protect you from negative experiences. So those are stored more effectively in some ways, and they're easier to access. Positive thoughts are more like Teflon. They tend to slide off and escape being registered. You have to work really hard to get them in there and to overcome all this negative stuff. Now, the brain prefers to run on automatic. I've told you that. You're doing it most of the time. And it takes only a 15% similarity between a new perception and a prior threat to create a threat response. Now, I want you to think about the implication of that. You're going along in the world and you encounter a new person, a new situation. It might even be a new business opportunity. And it takes only a 15% similarity between that new thing and some prior threat in your life that might not even be in your conscious mind. It's part of your subconscious. It drives a lot of your actions. You might not even have realized it, but over the years, it's picked up layer after layer after layer. And all of a sudden, this new thing that's only 15% similar to this old thing has you running old messages, unless you know how to not fall into that. And the brain cannot distinguish between actual experiences and remembered or imagined experiences. So when you're triggered into old memories, you are really, in many ways, you're not responding to what's right in front of you. You are responding to an old memory, which may be multi-layered and which might not even be conscious to you. And if you're imagining a fearful future, your brain doesn't actually know that you're imagining it. It may think it's real. And this particular fact about the brain is one reason we want to learn to use imagination in a positive way, because If we're going to be imagining, we want to be imagining what we want and imagining ourselves and our teams and our clients capable of stepping into what we want and not something we don't want. So the bottom line is your brain is structured for survival by avoiding painful experiences and becoming fully engaged possibility thinker. It takes conscious effort and daily practice to create new neuronal pathways. So we have to work at it. If you're going into your brainstem, you're usually telling yourself a story, but it's a negative story. And so one thing you can do is if you're running a bunch of negative self-talk and you're telling a negative story, you can just stop yourself and say, wait a minute, listen to that story. That is not the story I want to tell. What story do I want to be happening now? So, you know, you can learn to catch yourself telling stories. I could teach an entire seminar on how humans make up stories all day. So here's the brain, prefrontal cortex up there by your forehead, right? There's your brain stem. It's down there close to the amygdala. And so I want to teach, which is near the seat of memory. And the amygdala is like a switchboard. It's pre-programmed to alert us to threats or rewards. It's hardwired to the hippocampus, the seat of memory. And remember, I told you, negative experiences are in many ways cataloged more effectively. And many times the amygdala will pick something up as a threat before it will see something as a positive or a possibility. The brain stem, also known as the dinosaur brain, can only react in three basic ways: fight, flight, or freeze. And the really scary thing, when you triggered into your brain stem, it reduces your problem solving and your reasoning abilities by up to 50%. Now, that's a lot. Some people think it's even more. So I was conservative in putting up to 50%. So the brain sees a threat, the amygdala activates the adrenal glands, and then it sends our attention down to the brainstem. Now, when your adrenal glands get activated, there's hundreds of other biochemical responses, none of which are good for you. They're stressful to the body. They make it difficult for you to think clearly, and it's not a good place to be. If you can see the opportunity, whether that comes to you naturally or you have to stop yourself and choose to frame something as an opportunity, as a possibility, then you will go up to the frontal cortex. And that's important because that's where your creative and your innovative problem-solving capabilities lie. And when you move yourself there consciously, you also change the biochemical mix in your body. When you see something familiar, which is where we are most of the day, your amygdala is quiet, it's calm, and you're using habitual conditioned responses. So again, you're on automatic. Now, you may think that's not true, but I want you to think about how much you are a creature of habit, because you get up on the same side of the bed every day, you go through the same morning routine, you sit in the same chair, you hold your mug in the same hand, you drive the same route to the same job, or you're going to the room where you've got your Zoom set up now if you're not going out a lot. But you're doing the same things that you know how to do with the same people who push the same emotional buttons every day. At the end of the day, you choose the same evening routine you did the night before. You brush your teeth as part of the same bedtime routine. You get in on the same side of the bed, and you do it all over again the same day. And it leads to a habitual biochemical response to each aspect of your habituated behavior. In other words, when you act out of old habit patterns, you strengthen those neural pathways and it leads to neurorigidity. And one thing you can do, and you know, there's lots of people that have been telling us this for a long time, just practice doing things a different way. Drive a different route to the grocery store. You know, if you take a walk every day, if you're getting outside, you know, I know Ann and Blair are taking a lot of walks now. When you leave your house next time, Ann, just instead of turning right down the street, go left down the street. You know, if you've got a route that you like to take, mix it up. Go the opposite direction at least, or, you know, take a whole different route. If we don't force ourselves to do things different, we actually lose our flexibility, and we need to practice that as much as we can. Now, I'll tell you, when Dan and I were first teaching this stuff, we would talk about shifting from dinosaur thinking to possibility thinking in 5 steps. And so here were the 5 steps. First, to stop, you know, breathe deeply, relax. You want to do that because when you go into any kind of stress response, your muscles tense up, your brain kind of shuts down the oxygen to your brain, it puts it to your muscles, you're preparing for fight or flight. So if you stop and you breathe deeply and consciously all the way down into your gut, that will open up the oxygen flow to your brain as well and help you. But if you're going into your brain stem, you're telling yourself an old story. And so you've got to challenge those perceptions. And you can ask yourself questions. Am I noticing all that's going on here? How might my own history and experience be limiting me? You know, what are the facts? What might I be assuming is true that's really not? You know, what story am I telling myself about the situation person? Is it 100% true? Did my interpretation cause unnecessary fears or threats in my own thinking? You know, those types of self-reflective questions that I'm sure many of you know how to ask because of the work you've done. But step 3 is then choosing, you know, what do I really want going forward? What is best for everybody involved here? You might, if you're thinking about your own business, you might think, you know, what is my vision? Wait, let me put that in front of me again. So that's what's guiding me. You might ask, who can I involve in helping me imagine a different future, right? This is what we want to tell our clients to ask themselves. They don't have to do it all by themselves. One thing that happens to people when they go into the brainstem is they start feeling like they can't tell anybody else what's going on. And somehow there's this crazy belief that you have to do it by yourself. Once you get remind yourself you have the capacity to choose, you can start acting. Well, what's the constructive next step I can take? And who can I involve in helping me step into a better future? Who can contribute to creating new possibilities? In other words, don't think you have to act by yourself. This is the time to be a team. But it is important to stay open to possibilities going forward. And one of the things I've learned to do is to just say kind of a little mantra to myself. There's always a possibility I can't see yet. There's always a possibility I can't see yet. Where's that possibility I can't see yet? And just play around with it that way. Now, the thing is, this, and when Dan came up with these 5 steps, he was the one that created these. I thought to myself, yeah, that's him, because he operates from his intellect a lot, and he is all about, you know, using your free will to choose. But, you know, what my life has taught me is that it's more about my habits. And so when you have a habit, it creates a comfort zone. You know, I told you earlier, it creates that biochemical flow in the body. And if you don't learn to shake up your thoughts, then they're going to lead to the same actions and behaviors, the same experience, the same feelings, the same biochemical flow. And that's why we spend 95% of our day in autopilot, because of what goes on in the body in relation to learned habits. So a while back, I ran into this book by Mel Robbins called The 5-Second Rule. And if you have not seen it, she's got stuff on YouTube, but I highly recommend you getting her book. It's on Kindle, you know, or you can get a hard copy. But this book really got my attention at a time I was having trouble moving out of some old habits. So the 5-second rule, she calls it a research-backed metacognition tool that creates immediate and lasting behavior change. And metacognition just means it's a tool that allows you to beat your brain in order to accomplish your greater goals. Now, how does that work? Okay. She claims that it taught her how to change, and I've had some success with it as well when I remember to use it. So you can use it daily to change small habits, getting up on time, stop procrastination. You can use it to complete certain specific goals, especially smaller goals. But sound is there, but it sounds stuttery. This effect goes in and out. Okay, I'll try sitting forward. Does that help? And I can see your face a little. Okay.
Not really. You're just breaking up pretty bad, Shauna. I mean, I can hear it and I hear what you're saying, but it's definitely kind of not great quality of
Okay. So I don't know what to do about that. It may mean
just keep going. I don't think there is much we can do about it. Just keep going. We can hear you. It's just a little strange.
okay. So when you use the 5-second rule, which I'm going to teach you in just a moment, but it does something far more remarkable. It wakes up your inner genius, the leader in you, the rock star, the athlete, the artist, the change agent inside you. Now we are all in TAN, we are all change agents. And we're trying to teach our clients to be change agents, and especially given this time when the new normal is not yet defined. We've got to be stronger change agents. Now, so what I learned from Mel Robbins is that you're always, you know what you want to do, you know what you should do, you know what you plan to do. And whenever you feel the instinct fire up to act on something, or you feel hesitation to do something you know you ought to do, like a commitment you made to a client or something like that, this is the time to use the rule, because she says you count backwards from 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, act or move, and you got to do something. And the reason, there's a long story about why she did it. I won't tell you, you should get the book and explore that yourself. But what she learned along the way, because she was also studying the neuroscience stuff, she realized you've got about 5 seconds from when you're prompted to do what you want to do anyway until your brain derails you and gets you off track. And so when you count, and it's important that you count backwards in terms of interrupting that tendency of the brain to sidetrack you. So if you, and I have found, and I live by myself, so it's easy to do this, but to count out loud, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then get up. You know, for me, I have to get up, because usually I'm sitting down. And if I don't get up after I've cued myself that I really can act, then I may tend to just keep sitting there. Now, there is a lot of basis in the neuroscience. We don't have time for me to try to explain to you the way she explained it, but I'll tell you, when I read it, I thought, no, she is right. She is really right. And so there's a lot of the reason I introduced her and the reason I wanted to introduce Daniel Amen is I want to tell you there are many people looking at why they haven't done what they thought they wanted to do, why other people have gotten off track in their life, and they are coming up with, it's their own passion, their own commitment to the knowledge they are uncovering or creating or resonating with, and it is out there everywhere. And Mel Robbins is just one of them, and Daniel Amen is another. So this new program he's got, he says, you aren't stuck with the brain you have, you can make it better, and I can prove it. I love that, just like I loved his other sentence, you know, fall in love with your brain and heal your mind. Now this really got my attention to how do work teams change together. Well, he says when a group learns about the brain together and they are improving their brain health together, it doubles their chance of success. Now he was kind of talking about families, but I put it in the context of work teams. And I have done a lot of work with teams over the years, and I know when teams learn together and they apply their learning, it always moves them more strongly towards success and the achievement of their own goals. And I'm going to suggest to you, what if it triples or quadruples the chance of success together? This is why I think we have to help our clients become possibility thinkers and help them get their entire teams involved. So again, fall in love with your brain to save your mind. The better care you take of your brain, your overall health is strengthened, including your mental health. And that may help a lot of people get out of the doldrums and the depression and the procrastination that they've gotten into because of the social distancing, you know, staying at home that we've had to do with the pandemic. Now here's the last concept of Amen's I'm going to introduce. Because he says when we're on that, you know, automatic pilot phase, that we have these automatic negative thoughts that just have become part of us. And he said we need to become our own anteater. We need to become an anteater and get rid of these by putting in different thoughts. And I just love this picture of this giant anteater from Australia to think about getting rid of these anteaters. So I'm going to end here with a piece from John Lennon's song, Imagine All the People. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us and the world will be as one. Now, I don't really mean that to be a political statement. I just, you could apply it to the protests, but you could apply it to the pandemic and how are we going to make the best decision, the right decision, any decision about reopening the economy. I mean, there's so much confusion and chaos and craziness out there. If you want to watch him, he is being played 4 more times in the next week for that program, and I guarantee you it would not be a waste of your time. And you can look that up on KNME channel 5 schedule if you don't get it here. You know, Alan Alda now has his own podcast about relating to people with healthy communication. He's an interesting person. I'll just close with my own quote again. The more you can see humor, the more effectively you can navigate the change and become a possibilitarian. So I'm going to stop the screen share. Your speaker is not working.
We got it all, Shauna, in terms of the recording and everything. So, Oh, you're muted now though, Shauna.
Okay.
There you go. I just actually wanted to just quickly share and say thank you, Shauna. I always love the presentations you do, and the parts of it that I'm sure some of this group has heard before, I love hearing again. So I just want to say that because I think it's just a helpful reminder and that reiteration. I want to just really quick share with everyone something that when you and I have talked about possibility thinking stuck with me so much, which is that our brains are natural incubators. And I remember one of the things that you talked to me about was about asking myself, oh, I wonder what I could make of this situation, or I wonder how this could change in some way, and then not getting caught up in the answer, that your brain automatically just starts to organize around that question. And I do that with things, and I'm amazed how often I'll wake up in the morning like, I had a great new thought about this. And it wasn't me working on it or digging into my brain or trying to figure it out. It was me just letting my brain do what it does best. Like, I wonder how I can deal with this situation. And I've learned to get a little bit more specific with it since you shared that with me, but it has really stuck with me as a powerful demonstration of how our brains can work, and when we get out of our own way to let them work. And I just wanted to share that because I don't know that I've ever told you that, but it was a very powerful thing that you shared with me that I use quite often.
Thanks, Kelly. That is something I learned from one of my spiritual teachers, and it's just, I wonder who's going to introduce me to my next client. I wonder how much fun I'm going to have with that client. I wonder what I'll learn with that client that I haven't known before. I wonder what will happen after that client and who they might introduce me to. And in a way, it sounds like you're setting a goal. It sounds like you're going for something specific, but the fact that you're just saying, I wonder, and you're putting it out as a question allows you to let it go and stop analyzing. We never really figure anything out through analysis. All of you, I'm sure, I know each of you well enough to know you have a fabulous analytical mind that often gets in the way, right? Because you're trying to overuse it. You're thinking that it's going to lead you to your answers, and really, maybe when you're analyzing somebody's books, Jonathan, your analytical mind is probably more useful in that case than it is in a lot of other cases that we're dealing with. So thanks, Kelly.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I was going to say, it absolutely gets in the way when we're talking about possibility thinking. I'm celebrated overthinker. But I like what Kelly said as well, because it reminded me of a quote that I often try to remind myself. Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, talks about this frequently in the book, how they were not allowed to say, we can't afford it. They were instead coached to say, how can I afford it? Because that puts your brain to work. And so just wanted to also say that thank you very much for this presentation. I find neurology fascinating, and the way that you're harnessing it to help us improve ourselves is wonderful. Thank you, Shauna.
Thank you, Jonathan. That's a great reframe. How can we afford it? Yeah.
I wanted to add another thought into all of our brains for possibility thinking, and that's a new thing. I don't know how totally new it is, but it's new to me, is emergent science. I don't know if anyone's been reading about that, but it's a concept that has been talked about in other language for a long time. The whole idea of salons and coffee houses where you would have a group of people in a room in conversation, various conversations going on. And just because of that interchange going on in that room between a variety of people that may not be talking to each other, additional things start to emerge out of that. We're simply by being exposed to those thoughts of other people, other things, that brings us to similar things that Kelly was talking about when she says, I wonder what, and you taught me as well, Shauna, the I wonder moment. The I wonder thing is taking not just what's in our own minds, but all of these other things that are in our world around us constantly and putting them all together. And emergence is this amazing synchrony that comes out of that without purposely guiding it.
Interesting.
I highly recommend looking at that up if anybody is interested in it. It's very rooted in the neurology and in physics and biology. They are seeing it in insect behavior and human behavior too. So it's a pretty exciting thing that fits right in as the next thought in possibility thinking.
I was actually considering starting possibility thinking, I don't know exactly support group, but some kind of focus group, some kind of, discussion group, perhaps a possibility thinking discussion group. And some of you may or may not be interested. I know a couple of other people that would be interested. And of course, with Zoom, that's an easy thing to do. I think pretty soon I'm gonna get a paid Zoom account. I only have a free one now, but I don't know if you've been using them for TAN, but another group I'm in, you can actually there are breakout rooms in Zoom. Have you guys been using those?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've used them? Yeah. So that really intrigues me. That I wonder how that emergent science thing and what happens when you're on Zoom and you're doing things through the internet. I'm in a discussion group, a book discussion group, and a couple of months back we started having our meetings by Zoom when all this pandemic stuff happened. All the women in there older than me, and they were all worried what would happen to this wonderful feeling of warmth and connection we had by meeting together. And at the end of our first Zoom meeting, the oldest one in the group went, "Wow, I love this." She said, "I could practically feel the energy coming across the internet." And, her husband had to teach her about Zoom before we could have the meeting. But it was actually wonderful. So.
Totally awesome.
Shauna, this is really timely that you're doing this now, and I'm glad you did it, because it is so important now. Everybody I've been dealing with, clients and other professionals, there is that point of, I begin with the negative, and after a while you say, we got to reframe that, find a way to reframe that, whether it's I wonder what, or what if, or how could we look at that differently? And now it's the time to do that, because people are really stuck in their own, either they're in their own little dark place and they can't get out, or they're not seeing the possibilities because they're not either asking themselves the right questions or they're not seeking somebody to help them, And so I think it's just timely as hell to really share this now, and because you made me think about a couple of client interactions where, I couldn't help them get out of the dark place, they were just so stuck, and it made me think more about how I help them. So this is really valuable, Shauna. Thank you.
Surely, Jeff. And I worry not so much about people who are in the dark place, but I worry about people who have somehow this misguided notion that the world will be the same again. And I just don't see that happening. And I don't think any of the experts see that happening either, whether they're looking at it, whether they're a medical expert like Dr. Fauci, or it's John Rice, right? Or the two guys that wrote this imagination article. And if you guys want to look at that article, Anne can give you the citation, but it's on HBR online. And again, it's called How to, oh, now I've lost the first page here.
Well, if you like, I can send a link to the initial stuff I've learned on the emergent science and to the HBR article to everybody that's on the call.
That
Yeah,
would be
I
great.
It would be great actually if Anne, you could share that. And then Shauna, would you be willing to share your PowerPoint presentation?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm willing to share it as long as you're not trying to teach with it.
Yeah, no, I think there are a couple things like Jeff was saying that are really remarkable, either quotes or ways of thinking that would be really helpful to be able to reference before you talk to a client sometimes. It's like, okay, you've kind of created this way of thinking about the world that you've pretty much subconsciously done for a long time, and now it's got to change. So what are the ways that you can do that? What does that mean? I mean, even just helping somebody recognize how often they have habitual thoughts can get someone to go, oh, wow, I hadn't even thought of that. So now, what do I do now? So
right.
No, only if you want to, Shauna. I know there are a couple things in it that would be really helpful for me to, that I can already think that would be helpful for a couple clients in terms of either some of the quotes or.
I'm definitely willing to share it, Kelly. And
Okay.
in fact, what I would offer to this group is I'm happy to have one or more coaching sessions with you, just no charge, no money exchanged, because I was serious. I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm so clogged up today. When I was contemplating this and then pulling it together, I really did realize this is what I need to be doing right now. Right. This is what I need to be doing in the world.
Yeah.
And I don't know any more than anybody else knows how I'm supposed to do that in a world where we don't know what the new normal is.
Right. Right.
No, and so the more I'm out there sharing it and having exchange with other people, that creates a flow in my life that will then have the synchronicity kick in, and I'm sure I'll be shown what to do and how to do it. So I'm happy to do that with anybody here. We could do it with Zoom, or if you're not afraid to get together now, we could have a cup of coffee together.
That would be nice. I was just wanted to share a little bit of a story because I think this will connect with a lot of people's experiences with their clients. And this has just been in my own journey. So a few weeks back, it might have been as much as a month ago, I was feeling very, very depressed because of what Shauna was just talking about. We don't know what the new normal is. And that is totally our propensity as human beings, which you were talking about in this presentation as well. The reason we have all that negative self-talk is that that's how we've learned to survive. It puts us out there wary of all of the mistakes that we can make. We like to know about, our brain wants to think that it's in control of its environment. And right now we're being slapped in the face saying, really, you aren't that much control. And the place we go first is to the worst case scenario rather than the best case. And in my own case, it was just that sense of, oh my God, I just have no idea what's going on. And then I stepped back, and that was at least a week that I was in that mindset. And then I stepped back, and maybe because of conversations Shauna and I had, I started to just think about, this is the lesson that you have to learn. We have to learn that we don't have control over the environment, that we have to be putting ourselves in that what if place in the positive way. We have amazing possibilities that could be coming out of this situation. It's not going to look the same, but it doesn't mean it's going to look bad.
That's right. There
So,
could be,
Shauna, I'm sorry, really quick. I just want to acknowledge that it's 12:40, which is a little bit over. So if people need to leave, please feel free because this is only an hour. But I just needed to say that really quick, Shauna, so you're not seeing people disappear or things
of
like that
course.
because people got to go. You have to go, Maria? Yeah, okay. Good to see you.
Bye.
Yep.
Well, yeah, I think the possibilities are pretty astonishing for what could happen. And, you know, again, I want to encourage you to look up Dr. Amen because he truly is this amazing possibility thinker, and he got engaged with studying the brain when he was much younger as a physician, and he's developed a scan, and you know, but he knows that not the whole world can go to him and have a scan, but he has worked with um, football players who got, you know, had those serious head injuries and got their whole life just derailed and taken away from him. He has developed an entire regimen of how to get your brain healthy. And I had it in here at first, and then I thought, Shauna, you don't have enough time for that. So I had to take it out. But you know, he has this little thing, Bright, he calls it Bright Minds, and there's all these things that he teaches people very clearly in his books, in his online programs. And again, he is of the belief that you are not stuck with any kind of mental health condition or impairment of your brain if you know how to love your brain. And then you get your mind back, or maybe you get a better mind than you've ever had, who knows. And so he's just somebody who's you know, he was asked to go to the White House, and he put out a recommendation that he thinks children should be taught about their brains from the time they're in grade school on. Now, I'm guessing he didn't get much reception about that right now, but he has that vision. He knows, he understands, and because he has this personal commitment to teaching people the importance of brain health and how it affects the mind and how it affects not only the body's health, but how you show up in the world. And then there's all these other teachers. I mean, there's just so many other people who've studied brain. And one I really like is Joe Dispenza, who has, one of his books is You Are the Placebo. And he's an astounding teacher and has this amazing understanding of the brain. But there's so many of them.
I have to go. You guys are welcome to stay and talk. Shauna, thank you so much. I found that so helpful, and I agree how timely it is. And I'll reach out to you personally about getting the PowerPoint and maybe being able to set up a time to talk because we haven't in a while.
Super.
And I'd love the HBR article. So if you don't mind sending it. And Jonathan, Jeff, it's good to see you guys. And I'm on my way out of town again, but I'll connect with folks when I get back. But thank you so much, everybody. I'm going to stop the recording, but you guys feel free to stick around.
I'm
Have a
gonna run
great
too,
trip,
but
Kelly.
thanks, Shauna.
Thank you.
And
Thanks, Shauna.
Thanks. Bye.
thanks, Shauna.